And we are live. Thank you guys for coming back once again. So, couple of things I wanted to talk about. One of the things is something of a big deal in my community, in the atheist community. There's been some pretty big news lately. The nun category has surpassed religious people in the U.S. apparently, officially. So something I pulled up the Pew what is it the religious landscape study by Pew Research Center, just to kind of take a look through it to give you guys an idea of how this works. The nun category encompasses not just atheists, but it also includes agnostics and a lot of other things. It's not just one small subset. So atheist, as far as I know, only include, I think atheists, self-professed atheists account for like 6-7% of the U.S. population, something like that. It's really, really tiny. But the nun category is a lot bigger. Religious nuns, now largest single religious group among Democrats. Evangelicals remain largest religious group in GOP coalition. Big surprise. See, this is something I just want to touch on real quick. The fact that evangelicals make up the largest religious group in the Republican Party. Relatively steady share of religiously affiliated adults say religion is very important to them. Total religiously affiliated, 64% say very, 27% say somewhat, 8% say not too religiously affiliated or not at all. Interesting. Then 2014, you can see where the numbers kind of changed. It went from 64% say very religiously affiliated, and then 66% in 2014 said very. So that's a change of 7 years. I think they do these studies every 7 years. Anyways, there's another study that I wanted to take a look at. So this one was atheists. Okay, Jehovah's Witnesses by state. Gender composition among all Jehovah's Witnesses, 35% men, 65% women. Immigrant status among Jehovah's Witnesses. Income distribution among Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, I figured this one was going to be interesting. Income distribution among Jehovah's Witnesses, because, of course, they have a lot of issues with the governing body kind of discourages them from being involved in college and going to college or anything like that. So what is going to happen with them? What's their income going to look like? 48% make less than $30,000 a year. Now, $30,000 a year is enough to live off of in many areas, but not in others, like in New York City, for example, or just in New York. If you're in downtown New York or southern New York state, there's no way you could survive off of that. You just couldn't, period. 25% make $30,000 to $50,000 a year. 22% make $50,000 to $100,000 a year. And then 4% make $100,000 a year or more. That's a fascinating statistic to me. I actually went to a Kingdom Hall that, when I was growing up, my parents were broke. They had no money. My dad was handicapped, and he lived off of Social Security pretty much. We were broke. But the thing about it was that the income that my parents got was steady. Since it was Social Security, it was guaranteed every month, which means that it was pretty easy to get a home loan. So we got a home loan in a little suburb that had a lot of rich people in it, even though we didn't live in a rich part of it. But that means we went to a Kingdom Hall that was really nice, that had a lot of rich people in it, surprisingly. One of the Jehovah's Witnesses that we knew was a dentist, and he had a PhD. And I don't think I think by the time we knew him, he was out of dentistry, and he's basically making dentures for people, like shaping them, and stuff like that. Like, dentists' offices would send teeth molds to him, and he would make the dentures with drills and stuff and send them back, which is really, really fascinating, because that is a seriously skilled a skilled job. Like, you have to be really good at what you do to do that correctly. And you wouldn't think a Jehovah's Witness would do that. Like, you wouldn't think that they would be skilled enough to do that. But apparently he went to college before he joined Jehovah's Witnesses because they discourage college so heavily. Percent of Jehovah's Witnesses who are parents of children under 18 among Jehovah's Witnesses, 29%, and then non-parents, 71%. There you go. Belief in God among Jehovah's Witnesses, 90% believe in God, absolutely certain. 8% believe in God, fairly certain. Oh, wow. 1% believe in God, but not to or not at all certain. And then under 1% believe in God or don't know, do not believe in God, or other, don't know if they believe in God. How bizarre that those are even options on the, like, what is this thing called? On the study, the poll. Jesus Christ, on the poll. Importance of religion in one's life among Jehovah's Witnesses. Attendance at religious services. If you don't attend services, it's a problem. They start calling you inactive, and it gets messy. You definitely need to participate in, like, the meetings and stuff, or you'll get, like, pre-shunned by your friends and family. Sources of guidance on right and wrong among Jehovah's Witnesses. I was looking for anything like that kind of popped out. Interpreting scripture among Jehovah's Witnesses. Word of God should be taken literally, 47%. Word of God, not everything taken literally, 40%. That's interesting. It tells me that at least, like, around half the Jehovah's Witnesses don't know how they're supposed to take the Bible, because they do have, like, a set rule about what they're supposed to believe about the Bible. This isn't up for debate. It should be 100% taken literally, but actually some of the things are not taken completely literally in the Bible by Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not sure if you guys heard, but I've been talking about this for a little while. There was a secret database that Jehovah's Witnesses had that they were hiding, that they weren't going to release the names. And it's just hit the news that it exists. Now, we've known about this for a long time. We knew about it because it came out in a court case, the Padron court case. And they were trying to get Jehovah's Witnesses to release the information, and it was part of discovery in the court case, but Jehovah's Witnesses opted to just settle, basically, outside of court, I think, with Padron. They paid him a ton of money. If they hadn't settled, then the court may have forced them to release the information in this database. Or Jehovah's Witnesses would have deleted it, one of the two. But I thought this was kind of interesting. So it says, in March 97, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, which is the nonprofit organization that oversees Jehovah's Witnesses. It's the Watchtower Society. That's what it means. Sent a letter to each of its 10,000 congregations and to many more congregations worldwide. The organization was concerned about the legal risk posed by possible child molesters within its ranks. The letter, there goes monetization on this video. The letter laid out instructions on how to deal with a known predator. Write a detailed report answering 12 questions. Was this a one-time occurrence, or did the accused have a history of molestation? How is the accused viewed within the community? Does anyone else know about the abuse? And mail it to Watchtower's headquarters in special blue envelopes. Keep a copy of the report in your congregation's confidential file. The instructions continued, and do not share it with anyone. Thus did the Jehovah's Witnesses build what might be the world's largest database of undocumented child molesters, at least 2 decades worth of names and addresses, likely numbering in tens of thousands, and detailed acts of alleged abuse, most of which have never been shared with law enforcement, all scanned and searchable in a Microsoft SharePoint file. In recent decades, much of the world's attention to allegations of abuse have focused on the Catholic Church and other religious groups. Less notice has been paid to the abuse among the Jehovah's Witnesses, a Christian sect with more than 8.5 million members. Yet, all this time, Watchtower has refused to comply with multiple court orders to release the information contained in its database, and has paid millions of dollars over the years to keep it secret, even from the survivors whose stories are contained within. That effort has been remarkably successful until recently. A white priority mailbox filled with manila envelopes sits on the floor of Mark O'Donnell's wood-paneled home office on the outskirts of Baltimore, Maryland. Mark, 51, is the owner of an exercise equipment repair business and a longtime Jehovah's Witness who quietly left the religion in late 2013. Soon after, he became known to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses as John Redwood. Oh, shit, John Redwood. Okay, I know him. An activist and a blogger who reports on the various controversies, including cases of child abuse surrounding Watchtower. Recently, he's begun using his own name. I did not know that. I thought that was a real name. Okay. He works with Lloyd Evans a lot. That's amazing. I'm so glad that he's involved in this. When I first met Mark in May of last year, he appeared at the front door of his modest home in the same outfit he nearly always wears: khaki cargo shorts, a short-sleeved shirt, white sneakers, and sweat socks pulled up over his calves. Well, that's kind of boring. One would think that he would mix it up a little bit every now and then. Why not black cargo shorts from time to time, or even multicolored? He invited me to his densely furnished office, where a fan barely dispelled the wafting smell of cat food. What the hell? Why are they talking about what his office smelled like? Are they trying to draw us a fucking picture here? What are they doing? Where a fan barely dispelled the wafting smell of cat food. He pulled an envelope from the priority mailbox and passed me its contents. A mixture of typed and handwritten letters discussing various sins allegedly committed by members of Jehovah's Witness congregation in Massachusetts. All the letters in the box had been stolen by an anonymous source inside the religion and shared with Mark. The sins described in the letters ranged from the mundane: smoking pot, marital infidelity, drunkenness — those are not mundane to Jehovah's Witnesses — to the horrifying. Slowly, over the past couple of years, Mark has been leaking the most damning contents of the box, much of which is still secret. Mark's eyebrows are permanently arched, and when he makes an important point, he peers out above his rimless glasses, eyes widened, which lends him a conspiratorial air. Start with these, he said. Oh my God, this is such a ridiculous article. Why are they writing it like this? Just give me the fucking information. I don't need this picture drawn. Ugh, God. With a conspiratorial air. Give me a break. Among the papers Mark showed me that day was a series of letters about a man from Springfield, Massachusetts, who'd been disfellowshipped, a form of excommunication, 3 times. When the man was once again reinstated in 2008, someone working in a division of Watchtower wrote to his congregation, noting that in 1989, which, by the way, is the year I was born, interestingly, he was said to have allowed his 11-year-old stepdaughter to touch his P word on at least 2 occasions. I was struck by the oddness of the language. It insinuated that the man had agreed to, rather than initiated, the contact. After I left Mark's house, I tracked down the stepdaughter, now 40. In fact, she told me she'd only been 8 when that happened. He was the adult and I was the kid, so I thought I didn't have any choice. She was terrified, she told me. It took me 2 years to go to my mom about it. That's really sad. Her mom immediately went to the congregation's elders, who later called the girl and her stepfather in to pray with them. Really? She remembers it as a humiliating experience. God, I hate this shit. Her stepfather was eventually disfellowshipped for instances that involved fornication, drunkenness, and lying, according to the letters. But according to the stepdaughter, his alleged molestation of her resulted only in his being privately reproved. Of course it did. A closed-door reprimand that is usually accompanied by a temporary loss of privileges, quote-unquote, such as being allowed to offer comments during Bible study or lead prayer. The letters make no reference to police being notified. The stepdaughter said her mother was encouraged to keep the matter private, and no attempt was made to keep the stepfather away from other children. Calls to the congregation's Kingdom Hall, the witness version of a church, for comment went unanswered. Yeah. So to break this down, basically they're saying that this is a case where this guy was breaking rules, and it was open and well known he was molesting this girl, and the mother knew it, and the daughter knew it, and he knew it, and the elders knew it, and everybody knew it. But instead of calling the police, they handled it internally, as they so often want to do. They want to believe that they are their own government. They want to believe that the police are unnecessary. They'll handle everything internally. They will disfellowship this guy and kick him out of the religion, and he won't be a problem anymore. That's their philosophy. They don't give a shit what happens when he leaves. They don't care what other children he comes in contact with when he leaves the religion, because they're not going to be Jehovah's Witness children. They're only worried about Jehovah's Witness children. They fancy themselves their own government. That is really the issue. And they treat it like a sin and not a crime, in my opinion. Of course, now I think they're getting a little bit better about it, about contacting the police and things like that. But over the years, they have really dropped the ball. And that's why they're paying out millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're paying out so much money right now that they had to sell off their headquarters that they've had since day one, pretty much. Since their heyday, since they got really, really big back forever ago. They had to sell it off. I think they made like $1.3 billion out of it or something. They had their slave labor build new headquarters for them. So that's how much money they're shelling out right now. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I suspect maybe even billions. I mean, there have been a few court cases where they've been ordered to pay $45, $50 million, $70 million. And how many of those court cases are there? Tons. I don't think they're reaching the billions yet in how much they've had to pay out, but it's in the hundreds of millions at least. So it's within an order of magnitude as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I'm glad to hear that this is being covered by mainstream news, because I've actually been talking about this for a long time, this database. I've talked about it in many videos, and I've mentioned that there are a suspected like 23,000 names, roughly. That's just an estimate. It could be 2,000. It could be 100,000. We really have no way of knowing, but that's a guess, and it's an educated guess. It's about 23,000. It's not out of thin air. There are reasons for believing that it's about that high. But anyway, yeah, I've been talking about it for a while. Glad to see that it's being covered by The Atlantic. I don't know anything about The Atlantic, but it seems pretty mainstream to me, so that's something. March 9th, 1997. That is when the police received a call from an anonymous person saying this group of people they believed committed mass suicide. That's what they told the police. Like I said, it was an anonymous person. So what happens is the police show up and they find 39 dead bodies just lying in bed with bags over their heads. They had consumed applesauce mixed with sleeping pills. So what happened was half of them had mixed up the applesauce and eaten it, put bags over their head. The other half watched them and went up and down the rows to make sure that they were, secured and going to sleep and everything else. And then the second half did the same thing, secured bags. And after some time, the police were called by this anonymous person. They show up, they find all of this here. And they found a bunch of tapes from the leader. Doe is what he went by. His real name's Marshall Applewhite. Now, I've talked about this before, but I have a point behind this. Why is it that this was considered a cult from day one, but Jehovah's Witnesses have not been considered a cult? What is it about Jehovah's Witnesses' presentation that doesn't scream cult to people? I didn't even think it was a cult. I didn't think that Mormons were a cult or any other groups like that were a cult until way later, until I discovered the bite model and started kind of trying to research it myself and figure out what a cult is. Why is it that these groups are considered mostly harmless when something like Heaven's Gate was called from the very start as being a cult? I remember looking through the bite model for the very first time and seeing things like, does the group set up a system of rewards and punishments? For example, heaven and hell. You've got the carrot and the stick. Why is setting up a system of rewards and punishments important? Why does that matter? Why is that a marker on the bite model? The reason is because you have things like, you can see this group trying to modify people's behavior through this system of rewards and punishments to try to turn them into who they want them to be. Okay? So if you send a dog to a training school, what are they going to do? If you're trying to teach the dog how to sit, or how to play dead, or how to roll over, something like that, what are you going to do? You're going to give it treats when it does it correctly, or you're going to chastise it in some way if it does it incorrectly, or at the very least, give it treats. I don't know. I've never trained dogs. I'm just throwing it out there. That's a system of rewards and punishments to teach this dog what you want it to do under certain circumstances. So if you hold your hand out, it's going to put its paw in your hand after enough positive reinforcement, right? It kind of becomes natural. It's like Pavlov's dog, where Pavlov would ring the bell and feed the dog. Ring the bell, feed the dog. Ring the bell, feed the dog. And after some time when he rang the bell, the dog would salivate, expecting food, before the food even came out. It's conditioning. It's conditioning people. These rewards and punishments, the system of rewards and punishments is intended to condition and modify people's behavior until they have a personality that you want them to have, or that these cult leaders want their members to have. So heaven and hell is commonly used as one of those methods of conditioning. The fear of hell, the promise of seeing loved ones after you die or after they've died, the promise of seeing loved ones who were handicapped or who were injured in some way, seeing them walk again, that kind of thing. When I was younger, I think I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old maybe, my oldest brother got disfellowshipped from Jehovah's Witnesses. And as a family, we shunned him. We were not allowed to talk to him. He was cut off. He wasn't allowed to come to the house. We weren't allowed to call him. We didn't answer the phone if he called us. And like I said, I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. I was doing what my parents told me to do. I didn't really see anything wrong with what I was doing. I didn't really connect the dots. I didn't understand what was happening. I was a little kid. I say this because I beat myself up over it now. And I try not to, because I really know it wasn't my fault that I shunned him. But I did. I shunned him. He doesn't blame me for it now. We're both on the outside, and we both talk now and everything, but it's still hard to deal with. And with Jehovah's Witnesses, that's part of their system of rewards and punishments, shunning. It's social pressure. They prevent you from taking part in social events. They forbid your family from speaking to you if you break their rules. It's a system of rewards and punishments designed to condition you to have a certain personality traits that they want you to have. Something else I noticed on the bite model when I was looking at it, comparing Jehovah's Witnesses to it, something called thought-stopping techniques. I thought about this, and I made note of some of the thought-stopping techniques or the anxiety-calming techniques that they had. For example, they would say, read the scriptures when you're upset. When you're thinking about something that you shouldn't be thinking about, like if you're having impure thoughts of some sort, read the scriptures. Memorize a scripture and condition yourself every time the word that triggers you to have these thoughts appears in your head, replace it with these scriptures. There's a thought-stopping techniques. I mean, they did a whole video series on how to do this. Basically, how to program yourself, how to brainwash yourself. I remember when I was little, I was afraid of monsters in my bedroom. I was afraid of the dark. I mean, most kids are afraid of the dark, right? Well, I told my mom that I was afraid of the dark. I said, I feel like there are monsters in my bedroom. She didn't exactly say it this way, but just to summarize, she said, yeah, there are monsters in there, but they're not monsters, they're demons in your bedroom. But if you say Jehovah's name, then they can't hurt you. So I would go into my bedroom at night saying the name Jehovah over and over again. Jehovah, 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 Jehovah. That's another technique to try to get you brainwashed. It's a thought-stopping technique. It's a technique to push you deeper into the religion, to make you rely on their methods. Another thing they do, I made note of on the bite model, is love bombing. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses are a little bit different with this one than many other religions. A lot of religions will actually befriend people, or they'll tell their members to befriend people specifically so that they can bring them into the religion. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses, they do that. They do want you to befriend people to bring them into the religion. But if the moment it looks like it's a dead end, you're supposed to run. The moment it looks like a dead end. You're not supposed to go hang out with people outside of the religion. You're not supposed to hang out with them outside of work or outside of school. You're supposed to preach to them. And the moment you think they're not really actually interested, you run. So they do love bombing. But like I said, it's not quite to the extent that other religions do it. So how do religions become cults? How does this happen? How do you get from some moderate thing to this extreme cult that's controlling people? Where is the leap there? The problem is that a lot of the time, when you are learning about these groups, like when you're learning about their ideologies, it doesn't seem that extreme to start. They kind of hide the extreme stuff from you. Or, on occasion, they are growing more extreme with you. So when I used to be an anti-SJW. I'm neither an SJW nor an anti-SJW anymore. But when I was an anti-SJW, I remember watching a lot of these YouTubers who were talking about it. And it seemed super reasonable at the time. I was so on board with everything that they were saying. And over time, it got more and more extreme, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't realize how extreme it was getting. But Kylie's mom, my daughter's mom, she was watching anti-SJW stuff too, but she was watching different YouTubers. And I saw her getting more extreme than me. I saw the gap. I saw it happening. And that's what it took to kind of shock me out of it for a second. It's like, wait a minute, wait. That's an extreme version of my position that I already hold. Then I started hearing the YouTubers that I was watching talking about the exact same thing. That's when I realized that I held extremist views, extremist anti-SJW views. And that's what it took to break me out of it. People in extremist religions don't see that it's extremist. They think it's reasonable and logical and consistent. And as time goes on, these religions get more and more and more extreme. And there's a massive gradient there that it's a gradual process of getting more extreme, and that's why the people don't realize it. That is how a religion becomes a cult and how it maintains members through that. The first guest I have on the list is Foiled No More. So give me a second to see if I can unmute you. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, my good
How's
sir.
it going?
No, I'm doing all right. Had a couple drinks, enjoyed a wonderful podcast.
Oh, awesome. All right. So we've never
Had
talked
a
on
new,
here before, have
cinnamon
we?
vodka. Say that one more time.
We haven't talked on here before, have we?
This is my first.
Oh, cool. So what religion were you originally? Are you still religious or?
Oh no, I am very, very much anti-religious.
Okay, tell me about it. So, how do you feel about it?
Well, a bit of background. I was born into the Lutheran Church, born and raised,
Okay.
baptized, had it shoved down my throat with my applesauce, basically.
Mm.
Here's your applesauce in the name of Jesus,
Right.
basically, is what I was growing up with. I went to church camp for basically all the years that I was in school, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I was devout. Or at least I thought. Because, you ask someone today and, I tell them, hey, I'm atheist. They're like, then you were never devout in the first
Oh,
place.
yeah.
Which I'm going to say that drives me so crazy.
I know.
Because, really? Really? You never had doubts? Really?
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. I know that argument. It drives me nuts, too.
Exactly. And, but then it came to a point in my life at the age of 20 years old. I was old enough. I was, starting to think on my own, but I was still very, very much religious. For my 20th birthday, we celebrated in my church. Now, at this point, I already had doubts in my mind. I already had, questions, but, like you said, I just looked, kept, saying God's name and, praying and whatnot, and I would think they would subside. How wrong I was.
Right.
Because 8 days later, now, pardon me if I do get a bit teary, because this still eats me up to this day.
It's fine. There's plenty that does it to me. Go on.
Oh, yeah. It was 8 days after my 20th birthday. We had a great meal, and I went to see the movie American Sniper. Which, by the way, for those of you in the chat who haven't seen it, such a good movie. Free plug.
I think
Anyways,
I remember that movie. I think I saw it. It was an interesting movie.
Oh, yeah. But I just gotten out of that movie, and I get a message from the cousin of one of my best friends. Now, he's developmentally disabled, and he doesn't really communicate very well through typing. Anyone who's familiar with the subreddit r/I had a stroke, he types like that. And he mentioned something about his cousin had died that day, and he mentioned her name, and I started freaking out. And I called her brother, and I asked, hey, did something happen to Catherine? And he told me that a week ago, she'd been admitted to the hospital with severe dehydration. She couldn't keep anything in her stomach, and they took her to the hospital, and she was immediately airlifted to the nearest major medical facility. Due to privacy reasons, I'm not going to say where. And it turns out that the reason she couldn't keep anything in her stomach was because she had a ginormous lump, a tumor, cancerous tumor on her pancreas. It was stage 4 terminal, and no one knew.
Was this recent, or how long ago was it?
This was 4 years ago.
Okay.
In January.
Okay.
And they rushed her in, and they put her in pre-OR. They were putting her under the sedatives, and before she even hit the operating table, she flatlined. They tried to bring her back, but it was too late.
That's a
now, keep in
shame.
mind, this is a friend. I was very suicidal from ages 14 to 20.
Right.
Or I should say 18, and then I was recently discharged from another inpatient facility for suicidal tendencies, but I'm doing better now. I've got support groups and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it was at that point in my life, this was a woman, a 24-year-old woman who had done nothing, absolutely nothing to harm anybody.
Yeah.
She was basically the living embodiment of a saint. She had saved my life more times than I can list, just by it was like she had the sixth sense about me. When I was feeling down and I wanted to just end it, I wanted to just cap myself. Somehow, she would know and she'd send me a message. And, we would talk and she'd ask me how I was feeling. And there were times where she would even rush over to my house, pick me up. And
Yeah.
the most memorable time was the first time she picked me up and she slapped me. And I looked at her bewildered and I just see the tears welling up in her eyes. And she said, "Don't you dare effing do this to me.
Yeah.
Don't you dare do this to your family. There are more people here counting on you than you know." Excuse me.
And that's what it took for you to kind of come to your senses about it, I guess?
Exactly.
Yeah.
At that point, I started questioning why, if there is this so-called loving God, why would he do this to someone who didn't do anything remotely close to deserving it? And
Right.
I'm going to say it now. Nobody deserves cancer in the first place. Which got me questioning even further, why is it even here in the first place?
Right.
Is it a work of the devil? Is the devil even real? Is God even real? And at that point, things started to click. And it was at that point, a month later, I officially started viewing myself as an atheist.
And you said you grew up Lutheran originally, right?
Very, very Lutheran. My
Right.
parents are still very, very devout. My mother knows, and she accepts it. My father doesn't know, and if he found out, I would be disowned.
Really? That intense, huh?
That intense. It's bad.
It's interesting to me that something like that ended up pushing you out. Sometimes what ends up happening is an event like that will push people in. What do you think it was about that event that made you kind of feel like, what made you go the direction of atheism instead of throwing yourself into religion instead, you think?
That's actually kind of the filling of the pie here. That's the good part of the pie. I actually, for the first time in my life, read the Bible cover to cover. I saw through the BS. I saw through the inconsistencies. I saw all the post-editing done in the Bible. And it made me question more. If this is the quote-unquote inerrant word of God, if nothing's wrong with it, then why are there so many post-edits done? And especially in the Old Testament where they were talking about, buying and sell, how you can buy and sell your slaves. And what threw me the most is the punishment for the rape of a virgin. For those of you who don't know, sorry, by the way, about your demonetization.
Oh, it's gone. It's fine. Go ahead.
I'll sub to your Patreon for you.
Oh, it's fine.
Help with the bills.
Thanks.
But was the forceful taking of a virgin's quote unquote innocence, the punishment for it. For those of you who don't know, in the old scripture, in the Old Testament, it's spelled out as 50 shekels to the father, and you are permanently married to the virgin you stole the innocence from. That, to me, just made me physically sick.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I started viewing it with more of a skeptical eye. That was the turning point of me becoming a skeptic in the first place.
Yeah. You know that the sad thing about it is that, like, a lot of the time religious people will try to kind of justify that away. But put it in perspective and put your own child in the shoes of that individual. Try to humanize the situation a little bit, and you'll understand where we're coming from with it, right?
Exactly. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I viewed myself, as my child.
Yeah.
What I would do personally in that situation, there wouldn't be a chance for that guy. There would not be another chance for that guy to do that same stupid stunt to somebody else.
Right.
He wouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah. It's such a horrific thing. People just don't connect the dots sometimes,
Especially me being a victim myself.
Right.
Of said act. Yes, guys can be victims too.
Yeah.
And after reading the final chapter of Revelation, and once I read the final Amen, I was like, what have I done with my life? I felt like I had just wasted so many years, wasted so much of my potential on this fairy tale, this fake ideal that I was living. And more recently, last year, I started delving into Anton LaVey's text.
Oh,
I started, reading the Black Bible, and I didn't read through all of it, but the parts I did read made way more sense to me
yep.
than the Bible itself.
Yeah.
And
The funny thing about that is that he wrote a lot of that as kind of the counter to the Bible. It's like the exact opposite, the antithesis. So the Bible says things like turn the other cheek if somebody offends you or something. Well, his Bible says try to avoid violence at all costs, but if you can't, then destroy the person or something like that. It's really interesting because the antithesis of the Bible turns out to be a better book than the Bible is sometimes.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's way less barbaric.
Yeah.
Because to me, it has more humanism involved in it.
Yeah.
It's got, a more humanistic approach, which is what I am at my core. I've always been a humanist. I want the best for those in my life. I want the best for people. Society, that can wait for another day, but the immediate people around me, those are the ones I care about the most.
Right.
And because, they're the ones I deal with on a day-to-day basis. I don't deal with everybody in a certain area at one specific time. No. And if you do, whoo-hoo, good luck keeping your sanity.
Right. For sure. It's really fascinating stuff. All right. I'm actually out of time. It's been a really fascinating conversation. So fascinating that I completely lost track of time. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. It's been interesting. I'll talk to you next time, okay?
I appreciate everything you do, Telltale. You have a wonderful channel. You're a wonderful content creator. Keep it up. Keep up the great work, and you'll have a new Patreon tonight.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later on then. FYI, just a quick note for everybody. If you are a patron, you can make it to the top of the list basically instantly. You're just kicked to the top. So, that's an option. I wish that he had known that earlier. He could have been on forever ago. I can't even imagine how long the guy's been waiting. But yeah, really fascinating conversation. I didn't even realize how deep into it we were. Was just super interested in it. Anyway, the next person on the list is One Ring, DNHS. Hang on one second. Let me find your name on the list because, fun fact, I'm really bad at spelling. Really bad at spelling. And so I can never find things, even though they're in alphabetical order. But just found it. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. How's it going?
Going all right.
So what religion were you originally? Are you still religious or?
I was ex-Pentecostal, hence the DNHS stands for Did Not Handle Snakes.
Really awesome. I didn't know that. That's funny. I think that the state that I live in, West Virginia, is the very last state where it's legal to handle snakes. That's what I heard. I don't know that for a fact, but anyway, you didn't handle snakes then, huh?
No.
What kind of Pentecostal were you? What was it like growing up that way?
So it's a sub-denomination called Foursquare.
It's familiar, but I don't think I know much about it.
Yeah. But it's very much Pentecostalite. They believe in the speaking in tongues. They believe in what's called gifts of the Spirit. Heck, while I was in it, I believed I could have visions. I believed I did get visions.
What kind of visions?
For instance, once during a worship service, and this was summer 2007, so just around it was before the Democratic primary, but I saw Barack Obama taking the oath of office.
Okay.
The oath of office.
Oh, okay. So that was your vision. You saw him taking the oath
Yeah.
of office.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. Are you still religious, or
No.
what happened? Like, how did you kind of give up on the whole idea? And how long ago was that you gave up on it?
It's very much a gradual thing.
Mm.
Because part of it was, a big part of it was the young Earth creationism,
Yeah.
and it's like, and the claim that there are no transitional fossils.
Mhm.
Well, one of the kind of straws that broke the camel's back was, I read a news article about the discovery of Tiktaalik,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm like, that's obviously a transitional fossil. Young Earth creation, evolution is a thing that.
There's almost like no denying it at a certain point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I think Tiktaalik was discovered like in Canada or something, and it was the transition between land and sea, right, or something.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it was like it was predicted by evolutionary theory where we would find this fossil, and we found it there, is what it was. That's why it was one of the reasons why it was so kind of groundbreaking or whatever in the field, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. How long ago did they discover Tiktaalik? Do you remember? I don't remember.
No, I don't remember.
But yeah, that is kind of like a 1-2 punch for young Earth creationism, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how long ago did you kind of find your way out of religion?
Well, like evolution itself, it's very, very difficult to find the, spot where it's like, okay, yeah, that's the transition point, because it was just kind of a slow, gradual process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. How many years ago did you leave religion officially, do you think?
Well, I stopped purposefully going to church while I was in the military, and then just kind of fell out.
Just kind of faded out, stopped going, stopped finding interest in it, that kind of thing?
I'd say I started labeling myself as an atheist around the Ham-Nye debate.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw that debate. What did you think about it?
I think Nye pretty much mopped the floor with Ham, because all Ham.
Like a plane trip, or I'm in like a long car ride or something, I'll just throw that on because it's there and I haven't seen it in forever, But yeah, that was such an awesome debate. I loved that. But you know what I find odd about it is there are a lot of people who say Ham mopped the floor with Nye. That blows my mind. Like, I don't see how you get there,
I can tell you pretty much like at least 99.9 repeating % of them are solidly young Earth creationists.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I just find it fascinating that anybody could view it that way, because Nye took every, like, even the extremists, like Nye took every claim that Ken Ham presented and broke it down and just destroyed it. Like, every single one in that debate. It seemed to me like, but on the other hand, I don't usually like using, like, in the context of debates, I don't usually like using language that says like winner or loser, because really it's hard to say anybody won or lose. Just you present more counter arguments more convincingly than the other person, really, right? But Nye, you're totally right. I think Nye just mopped the floor with the guy, just destroyed him. It was really a good debate, though. Here's the thing. Richard Dawkins famously said he doesn't think that we should be debating Christians. We shouldn't be talking about this because the debate's over. There is no debate. They've lost. We won, pretty much, right? I mean, Noah's flood didn't happen. That's just a fact. Evolution is real. That's a fact. We don't need to debate that stuff. But then Bill Nye went on stage and debated Ken Ham. So here's the question, like, should he have debated? I think he should have. I think Bill Nye did the right thing by debating Ken Ham. What do you think about it?
On one hand, yes, it probably did at least a little harm because it,
Giving it a platform or whatever.
got a lot of, got a lot of publicity for the Creation Museum. But on the other hand, it was one of the things that helped get me out.
Yeah.
Among other things, it probably helped a lot of people who were on the fence get out.
Yeah, I agree.
So overall, I'd say it was a good idea.
I agree. I think it did a lot more good than it did harm. Even if it meant that there was some kind of a small temporary cash infusion to the Creation Museum. I actually I went to the Creation Museum fairly recently, in the past year or something. And it was pretty interesting. I saw a lot of Mennonites there. I don't know if you've ever seen Mennonites before, but
no. Where I am, we actually have a disproportionate amount of Mormons.
Really? Are you
really
in the Utah area or?
No, that's why I said disproportionate amount.
Okay, got you. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit north from Utah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I live in West Virginia, which is right.
Montana here. So.
Wait, say again.
Montana.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got a buddy that lives in Montana. That's cool. Yeah, it's really cold up there, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
On the subject of the Creation Museum.
Yeah.
So my sister's, still in. She's still really into it.
That sucks.
And her daughter's not even 3, and she was already, she had already been taken to the Creation Museum.
Oh man.
So what I did was, when I was on honeymoon, me and my wife spent a week in London. So, and one of the things we did was we went to the Museum of Natural History. So I got a plush Darwin from the gift shop.
Awesome.
And I gave it to my niece as a Christmas present.
That's awesome. How did her mom feel about it?
You could definitely hear it's the fact dawning on my brother-in-law, because they videotaped my niece opening it.
Oh,
and it's
oh God.
It's oh, it's a Darwin and a turtle from the Galapagos.
That is funny, man. All right. Well, actually, I'm out of time. I'm going to continue off air, but I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. It's been really awesome. Maybe we'll talk again one of these days, okay? Yeah, I've been, like I was going to say, I didn't learn anything about evolution when I was younger. I didn't learn it in school or anything because I didn't have a biology class. I think I was supposed to have a biology class, but I didn't even graduate high school. I got a GED later on. I had to drop out of high school because I didn't have anywhere to live. My parents kicked me out because I was Jehovah's Witness, or because I left Jehovah's Witnesses. They kicked me out. I was in 11th grade when they kicked me out, and I had to get a job and work living in this girl's bedroom for 3 weeks until a buddy of mine at Burger King where I worked told me I could be his roommate for $150 a month. So I moved in with him, and I was trying to survive. I was just trying to survive, and I dropped out of school. But that means I didn't have a biology class. I didn't learn anything about evolution or anything until I was I taught it to myself, 22 years old or something. I learned all about it, learned everything I could about evolution because it was fascinating to me. Once you learn about the key concepts, it's really not that complicated a thing, honestly. It's if you just read about random mutation, where every time a baby is born, or every time offspring appears, it has a certain number of genetic mutations, right? So you get there, and most creationists will accept that. And then you look up gene duplication, which is where entire sets of your DNA are duplicated and spliced together. This is just a natural part of life. This is a natural part of reproduction. This is what happens. Gene duplication and mutation. Those two things combined lead to new information being added, which is something young Earth creationists say doesn't happen. And that's just how evolution works. That's how it works. We got the science behind it. We know enough about it to call it unequivocally. It is a fact. It's a fact. There's the theory of evolution, and then there's the fact of evolution. You can be religious and you can still accept evolution, but like I said, it's something that you accept or you reject because it's a fact. It isn't something that you believe or disbelieve. So anyway, okay, I wanted to get to another person, but it's actually past time. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to get going. I'm going to have to edit the podcast after this and everything. So appreciate you guys coming on and talking to me. It's been an awesome podcast, and I will talk to you next week.